Welcome to your personalized deep dive. Today, we're going to be meticulously examining the disappearance and tragic death of Jasmin Cigarroa.
Yeah, we've got quite a collection of sources here. Police reports, testimony from neighbors, family accounts as well.
And our goal really is to pull out those crucial details, build a clear timeline of what happened in this, well, really unsettling case for you.
Exactly. Our mission is pretty straightforward. Give you a compelling understanding of the events. We'll sift through all this information, highlighting what truly matter.
Right. So you can grasp the core of the story without getting sort of bogged down in maybe unnecessary details.
Precisely.
So for the best experience, as we walk through this together, maybe pop on some headphones or just turn up the volume a bit. It's just us digging into this right now.
Okay.
Okay.
So we were sleeping here, and we'd appeared a big boom above us.
It was over her husband because she didn't know if to divorce him or not, because they had an argument that those 3 months ago where he tried pulling her out of the car.
She just told me I have a confession to make. I haven't been completely honest with you. I've been in an abusive relationship with Johnny.
Let's get into it. The timeline, it starts with Jasmin Cigarroa's unexplained absence. That was Tuesday, March 9th, 2021.
Right. And the first sort of red flag was that she missed an appointment with friends.
An appointment with friends.
Yeah, and this wasn't just, a missed call or something. It was a scheduled meeting she just didn't show up for.
And people who knew her felt that was unusual.
Very unusual. They said it was really out of character for her. So right away, that suggests something wasn't right.
Okay. Then the very next day, that's Wednesday, March 10th, her husband, Jonathan Nuno Mahangos, he reports her missing from their home.
Yes, from their place on the 7500 block of East 28th Avenue.
Okay, so let's focus on what Jonathan first told the 911 operator. What was his initial story?
Well, he said he last seen Jasmin on Tuesday morning before he left for work.
Oh, okay.
And he also mentioned she texted him around 10 a.m. that same Tuesday.
A text. What did it say?
It said she was planning to go out with friends that evening, but, and this is kind of key, she didn't give any specifics.
No specifics, like who or where.
Exactly. No names, no location, just going out with friends.
Did he mention anything else? Something about her car, maybe?
Yes, exactly. He noted her car, the red Mini Cooper, was still at their home.
It's still there. So what did he make of that?
Well, his assumption was, okay, a friend must have picked her up for this evening outing.
Wouldn't you usually know which friend? Or maybe ask? Especially if the car's still there.
You'd think so, right? It seems a bit unusual not to have those details, or at least not to have asked about them. His assumption, without her apparently mentioning any pickup plans, it just feels a little off.
Yeah, it really does. It doesn't quite track with how people normally talk about plans, does it?
No, not really.
Okay, so let's bring in some other perspectives then, see if Jonathan's account holds up. What did the neighbors see or hear around this time? Right,
the neighbor testimonies. This is where things start to get, well, conflicting and frankly, pretty unsettling.
Oh.
One neighbor, they were home with their young son that Tuesday morning. They remembered it specifically because the son had a doctor's appointment at 11 a.m.
Okay, so they have a clear time marker.
Exactly. And they recall hearing a big boom coming from the Cigarroa's apartment.
A big boom. That sounds significant.
It does. They said they initially kind of dismissed it, but the intensity of the sound, it stuck with them. It wasn't just a door slam or something normal.
Wow. Okay. A big boom. Did they hear anything else right after that?
Well, about 20 minutes after this boom, so maybe around 11:20 or so, the same neighbor heard Jasmin's car start up.
Her red Mini Cooper. The loud one.
That's the one. Very recognizable. But here's where it gets really interesting.
Go on.
The neighbor specifically noted the car didn't just drive off. It, quote, sat there idling for a while.
Idling?
Yeah. And then when it did pull off, it was hesitant, really hesitant. The neighbor was quite clear this was not like Jasmin's usual way of driving off, which was apparently smooth and prompt.
So a loud bang, then maybe 20 minutes later, her car starts, idles for a bit, then pulls away hesitantly.
Exactly. That whole sequence, it definitely raises questions about what might have been happening inside that apartment around 11 a.m. Tuesday.
It really paints a strange picture. And the neighbors' observations, they didn't stop there, did they? It went into the evening.
That's right. Later that Tuesday evening, around 10 p.m., this neighbor saw Jonathan's white car parked in their shared garage.
And that was unusual.
They found it unusual, yeah, based on, the typical patterns of who parked where and when.
Okay.
And then even later, after midnight, the neighbor came home from picking up their spouse as they were pulling into the garage,
Yes.
they saw Jonathan actually moving his white car out of the garage right as they were pulling in.
Moving his car out after midnight.
Yeah, so that's pretty noteworthy late-night activity, especially when you compare it to what he initially told the police about, just having a normal evening.
It definitely suggests something was going on that he wasn't immediately sharing.
Yeah.
Okay, so discrepancies are already piling up. Now, let's bring in Jasmin's brother, Francisco. What did he notice?
Francisco's observations add another layer, particularly about that red Mini Cooper again.
The parking.
Exactly. He noticed it was parked, tilted in the garage. The front was pointing left. The back was towards the other neighbor's garage space.
And why is that significant? Just tilted parking.
Well, it might seem small, but Francisco stressed that Jasmin was incredibly meticulous about her parking, like obsessive about it being perfectly straight.
Oh.
So for him, this tilted parking immediately suggested someone else had parked the car, someone who maybe wasn't as careful or perhaps parked it in a hurry.
Right. So, okay, let's just recap quickly. We've got a hesitant car departure, Jonathan moving his car late at night, and now this weird parking job. None of that lines up neatly with Jonathan's story of a normal Tuesday.
Not at all.
And the sources also mentioned their marriage wasn't exactly stable.
Yeah, that's putting it mildly. The investigation, talking to friends and family, it uncovered that their marriage was deeply troubled. People described it as being on the verge of collapse.
Really?
Tragically, yes. Jasmin had actually confided in a friend that she was in an abusive relationship with Jonathan.
Oh, no.
And that she'd even been to the hospital a few times because of it.
Wow. That's serious.
Very. She'd also talked about trying to leave him before and him trying to leave too, but somehow they always ended up back together. It sounds like a really volatile and potentially dangerous dynamic.
And Francisco, her brother, he had more specifics on this too, didn't he?
He did. He recalled a really disturbing argument, maybe about 3 months before she disappeared. He said Jonathan actually tried pulling her out of the car.
Pulling her out of the car physically.
That's what he said. And apparently it got bad enough that the police were called.
Police were involved previously. Okay.
And Francisco also revealed something else crucial about a specific Tuesday, March 9th.
What is that?
Jasmin had a therapy appointment scheduled for 1 p.m. that day.
She had an appointment scheduled for 1 p.m. on the day she disappeared.
Yes.
Then,
Which really makes you think, doesn't it? It shows she was actively seeking help. She had concrete plans for that afternoon.
it definitely doesn't fit with this idea of her just spontaneously deciding to go out with some unnamed friends later that evening without telling Jonathan any details.
Exactly. It casts even more doubt on his version of events.
What else did Francisco notice? He went to the apartment after she was reported missing, right?
He did, and he noticed something he found really strange.
What?
All of Jasmin's shoes were gone. Like 3 or 4 pairs, just missing from the apartment.
All her shoes. That is weird.
Right. He knew her, and he felt that wasn't typical. It suggested she hadn't just, stepped out briefly. Why would she leave without any shoes?
Yeah, good point. Okay, and then there's the Ring camera footage, or I guess the lack of footage. This seems really important.
Absolutely crucial. Francisco managed to get access to the footage from Jasmin's Ring doorbell camera.
And
He found a huge gap, a significant gap in the recording.
when was the gap?
The camera was apparently turned off from around 11 p.m. on Tuesday night,
Tuesday night. All
at
right.
about 7 a.m. on Wednesday morning.
Right around the time the neighbor saw him moving his car, and before he reported her missing.
Precisely. And importantly, the information was that only Jonathan had access to the Ring account to turn it off or on.
So only he could have turned it off during that exact window.
That was the understanding. The timing is just incredibly suspicious. It begs the question, what happened during those 8 hours when the camera was conveniently offline?
It really does make you wonder what someone might not want recorded. Okay, let's circle back to Jonathan's statements to the police then. He claimed the marriage was happy and healthy.
Right, which we now know directly contradicts what friends and family, and even Jasmin herself, had said.
What else did he tell investigators about that Tuesday morning? Did he stick to the normal morning story?
Pretty much. He described it as completely normal, said they were even making plans for her graduation trip to Utah.
Okay. And the text message about going out with friends?
He maintained she sent it around 10 a.m., and his reason for just replying okay was, he claimed, to avoid an argument based on their, past relationship issues.
How did he explain the boom that the neighbor heard so clearly?
The boom. He attributed that to their dog.
The dog?
Yeah, said the dog was playing with what he called an unbreakable bone and must have banged it really hard.
An unbreakable dog bone caused a big boom. That sounds a bit thin.
It does seem like a stretch, doesn't it? He also sort of downplayed his relationship with the neighbors, saying he didn't know them well and mentioned he'd filed complaints about the downstairs neighbors smoking weed.
Trying to discredit them, maybe?
Perhaps. It could be seen as an attempt to deflect or paint them in a negative light.
What about the text messages Jasmin supposedly sent him? Did he show them to the police?
Well, that's another point. When they asked about texts from Jasmin on Tuesday, he initially said he didn't have any.
Didn't have them. Why not?
His explanation was that he routinely deleted all his messages every month. So conveniently, that specific text was gone.
That sounds very convenient indeed. Monthly deletion of all texts.
It raised eyebrows, yes. He also strongly denied ever parking Jasmin's car, except maybe, possibly, for a quick moment to practice reversing it once.
Denied parking her car, even though her brother noticed it parked strangely.
Correct. And he insisted his own white car was parked out on the street the entire time.
Which directly contradicts the neighbor who saw it in the garage late Tuesday night and saw him moving it after midnight.
Another direct contradiction. His story just wasn't lining up with the physical observations.
Okay, now this is where technology comes in. The cell phone data. This must have been a major turning point for investigators.
Absolutely pivotal. Investigators got his cell phone records, and the data showed his phone leaving their address shortly after midnight on Wednesday morning.
Leaving the apartment, just like the neighbor suggested.
Exactly. The data showed the phone heading eastbound on I-70.
And what did Jonathan say when confronted with this? Did he deny it?
Vehemently. Despite this concrete digital evidence showing his phone moving away from home in the middle of the night, he absolutely denied leaving the apartment at that time.
Wow. Denying hard evidence like that is bold. Did he eventually crack? Did he offer any explanation?
Well, only after they kept pressing him. After repeated questioning, he finally admitted, okay, yes, he did leave the apartment around midnight.
He admitted it. What was his reason?
His story started changing. First, he claimed he just drove a short distance to Tower Road.
Okay.
But then he changed it again, said no, actually, he stopped on Smith Road instead.
Why the change? Why the drive at all?
His explanation for the sudden midnight drive was that he couldn't sleep. Said he was worried about Jasmin.
Worried about Jasmin, so he went for a drive east on I-70 and initially lied about it.
Exactly. These inconsistencies, the shifting story about where he went and why, it just further damages his credibility. It raises huge doubts about what he was really doing that night.
So with this cell phone data pointing east on I-70, the search for Jasmin must have gained a new focus area.
It did. Based on that data showing where his phone had been, the search efforts began on Thursday, March 11th, focusing on that general area along I-70.
And tragically, that search, it didn't take long, did it?
No, unfortunately not. On Friday, March 12th, searchers discovered Jasmin Cigarroa's remains.
Where were they found?
At East 26th Avenue and Powhatan Road.
And how does that location connect?
It's within the same area where Jonathan's cell phone data had placed him during those early hours of Wednesday morning. The location matched the phone data.
Oh my God. And the cause of death?
It was determined to be strangulation.
So the location matches, his phone pings, the death is violent.
What happened legally? Did he maintain his innocence?
He did. Despite all this mounting evidence, the inconsistencies, the neighbors' accounts, the phone data, the location of the body, Jonathan maintained his innocence throughout.
But what was the verdict?
He was found guilty. In 2024, he was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Life without parole. So when you put all these pieces together, all this information from the sources, what are the key takeaways that really stand out?
Well, there are several, really. First, you have the clear pattern of inconsistencies in Jonathan's timeline right from the very beginning. Right, his story kept changing.
Exactly. Then you have the neighbor's observations, the boom, the strange car behavior, seeing him moving the car late at night, all contradicting his initial account.
Things he couldn't really explain away.
Then there's the background context, the confirmed history of a troubled, even abusive relationship. That can't be ignored.
No,
The Ring camera gap is huge. That suspiciously timed outage when only he could control it.
Very suspicious.
And his evolving contradictory explanations for that late-night drive, especially when faced with his own cell phone data, it just completely undermines anything he said.
Yeah, the lies really piled up.
And then the most damning piece, perhaps the tragic discovery of Jasmin's remains in the exact area where his cell phone placed him just hours after she was likely killed. It paints a very clear, very grim picture.
Wow. This deep dive into the sources around Jasmin Cigarroa's disappearance and death.
Yeah.
It really does reveal a disturbing sequence of events. It's far more complex, far more tragic than just a missing person report initially suggested.
Absolutely. And as you process all this information, what stands out most to you? Maybe think about the weight of those inconsistencies in his stories.
Yeah, and how seemingly small details, like the way the car was parked or that Ring camera being off, how significant they become in the larger picture.
Exactly. Those details really matter when you look at everything together.
The hope, of course, as the outcome suggests, is that the conviction and sentence provide at least some measure of solace, some sense of justice for Jasmin's loved ones after going through something so devastating.
We can only hope so. Thank you for joining us as we've navigated through this complex and really tragic set of information together.
We definitely encourage you to reflect on the details we've discussed. Perhaps consider what further questions or thoughts arise for you from this incredibly sad story.